Urinary system, consisting of the kidneys, ureters, bladder, and urethra, removes wastes from the blood and helps to maintain water and electrolyte balance. Kidneys. Two structures located on each side of the lumbar region that filter blood and secrete impurities, forming urine. Renal hilum. A medial indentation where several structures enter or exit the kidney, ureters, renal blood vessels, and nerves. Adrenal gland. Tissue located on top of the kidneys that releases adrenaline and cortisol during states of emotional arousal. Fibrous capsule. Encloses each kidney and gives a fresh kidney a glistening appearance. Perirenal fat capsule. Fatty mass that cushions the kidney. Renal fascia. Outermost layer of the kidney composed of dense irregular tissue, anchors kidney to the back of the body wall. Ptosis. Falling or downward displacement. Hydronephrosis. Accumulation of urine in the kidney because of an obstruction in the ureter, often caused by the drop of the kidneys due to ptosis. Ptosis of the kidneys occurs when there is rapid weight loss, because fat is what mostly holds the kidneys in place. Renal cortex. The outer region of the kidney. Renal medulla. Basically triangular regions with a striped appearance. The broader base of each pyramid faces toward the cortex. Its tip, the apex, points toward the inner region of the kidney. Renal columns. The pyramids of the renal medulla are separated by extensions of cortex-like tissues. Renal pelvis. A structure shaped like a funnel in the outlet of the kidney into which urine is discharged before passing into the ureter. Calyces. Form cup-shaped areas that enclose the tips of the renal medullar pyramids. They collect urine, which continuously drains from the tips of the pyramids into the renal pelvis. How much of the total blood supply passes through the kidneys each minute? ¼ Renal artery. An artery originating from the abdominal aorta and supplying the kidneys and adrenal glands and ureters. Segmental arteries. As the renal artery approaches the hilum, it divides into these, each of which gives off several branches called interlobar arteries. Interlobar arteries travel through the renal columns to reach the cortex. At the cortex-medulla junction, these give off the arcuate arteries. Arcuate arteries curve over the medullary pyramids. Cortical radiate arteries branch off the arcuate arteries and run outward to supply the cortical tissue. What are the arteries of the kidneys in the order that the blood travels through them? Renal artery, segmental arteries, interlobar arteries, arcuate arteries, cortical radiate arteries. What are the renal veins in the order that the blood flows through them? Cortical radiate veins, arcuate veins, interlobar veins, renal vein. Nephron. Microscopic functional units of the kidney, comprised of kidney cells and capillaries, each of which is capable of forming urine. Glomerulus. Small network of capillaries encased in the upper end of a nephron, where the filtration of blood takes place. Renal tubule. Important structure in the kidney that contains tubular fluid, a filtrate that eventually becomes urine, and is excreted from the body. They are part of the nephron, the basic functional unit of the kidney. Each normal human kidney has about 800,000 to 1 million nephrons, and each nephron has one of these. Glomerular capsule, end of a renal tubule that surrounds the glomerulus. Podocytes. A cell with branching tentacle-shaped extensions on the visceral wall of the Bowman's capsule that constitutes the barrier through which blood is filtered in the glomerulus of the kidney. Proximal convoluted tubule reabsorbs 65% of the glomerular filtrate and returns it to the blood. Cells also contain abundant, large mitochondria that provide ATP for active transport. First part of the renal tubule. Loop of Henle. The portion of the nephron that leads from the proximal convoluted tubule to the distal convoluted tubule. It has a hairpin bend in the renal medulla, and the main function of this structure is to reabsorb water and ions from the urine. Distal convoluted tubule. The portion of the nephron tubule after the loop of Henle, but before the collecting duct. Selective reabsorption and secretion occur here, most notably regulated reabsorption of water and sodium. Cortical nephrons. Nephrons located almost entirely in the renal cortex. Juxtamedullary nephrons contain the loop of Henle, or located close to the cortex medullary junction, and penetrate well into the medulla. Collecting ducts receives urine from many nephrons and runs downward through the medullary pyramids, giving them their striped appearance. They give the striped appearance as they approach the renal pelvis. They fuse to form larger papillary ducts which empty the final urinary product into the calyces and pelvis of the kidney. Peritubular capillary bed. The second capillary bed of nephron that reclaims most of glomerulus filtrate, low-pressure, porous vessels that are adapted for absorption instead of filtration. They cling closely to the whole length of the renal tubule. Afferent arteriole. The small artery that carries blood toward the capillaries of the glomerulus. Efferent arteriole. The small artery that carries blood away from the capillaries of the glomerulus. Glomerular filtration. A non-selective, passive process in which fluid passes from the blood into the glomerular capsule, part of the renal tubule. Once in the capsule, the fluid is called filtrate, and it is essentially blood plasma without blood proteins. Oliguria. An abnormally low urinary output. Anuria. A very low urinary output. Tubular reabsorption. Movement of primarily nutrient molecules and water from the contents of the nephron into blood at the proximal convoluted tubule. Some reabsorption is done passively, while most requires active transport processes. These use membrane carriers and are very selective. Abundance of carriers for substances that need to be retained and none for substances that of no use. Nitrogenous waste products. Poorly absorbed or not at all. These include urea, uric acid by the liver as an end product of protein breakdown, uric acid, released when nucleic acids are metabolized, and creatinine, associated with creatine metabolism in muscle tissue. Tubular secretion. Substances such as hydrogen and potassium ions and creatinine also move from the blood of the peritubular capillaries through the tubule cells or from the tubule cells themselves into the filtrate to be eliminated in urine. Urine contains nitrogenous wastes and unneeded substances. Specific gravity. The term used to compare how much heavier urine is than distilled water. Ureters. Two slender tubes, each 25 to 30 centimeters long and 6 millimeters in diameter, each runs behind the peritoneum from the renal hilum to the posterior aspect of the bladder. Passageways that carry urine from the kidneys to the bladder. Renal calculi. When urine becomes extremely concentrated, solutes such as uric acid salts form crystals that precipitate in the renal pelvis, also called kidney stones. Urinary bladder. A smooth, collapsible muscular sac that stores urine temporarily. In males, the prostate gland surrounds the neck of the bladder where it empties into the urethra. Trigon. The smooth triangular region of the bladder base outlined by three openings called ureteral orifices, 2, and the urethra. Urethra. A thin-walled tube that carries urine by peristalsis from the bladder to the outside of the body. Internal urethral sphincter. At the bladder-urethra junction, a thickening of the smooth muscle forms this. It is an involuntary sphincter that keeps the urethra closed when urine is not being passed. External urethral sphincter. Skeletal muscle as the urethra passes through the pelvic floor. Urethritis. Inflammation of the urethra can cause bladder inflammation or even kidney inflammation. Pyelonephritis or pyelitis. Three regions of the urethra as men. Prostatic, membranous and spongy. Micturition. Avoiding, the act of emptying the bladder. Incontinence. Occurs when we are unable to voluntarily control the external sphincter, normal in children 2 and younger. Urinary retention. A condition in which the bladder is unable to expel its contained urine. Hyperplasia. Enlargements of the prostate gland, common in older men, can cause urinary retention. What are kidneys' 4 major roles? Excretion of nitrogen-containing wastes, maintaining water and electrolyte balance of the blood and ensuring proper blood pH. Intracellular fluid. Found within the cells of the body and accounts for about 2/3 of total body fluids, provides a medium in which metabolic processes of the cell take place. Extracellular fluid. Body fluid located outside the cell. It consists of two types, interstitial and intravascular, and intravascular plasma. Thirst mechanism. Driving force for water intake. Thirst mechanism. An increase in plasma solute content of only 2 to 3% excites these highly sensitive cells in the hypothalamus. Antidiuretic hormone. Also called vasopressin, this hormone is produced in the hypothalamus and secreted by TEH posterior pituitary gland. It affects the kidney tubules, increasing their permeability to water, and thus increasing water retention by the body. Also raises blood pressure by inducing moderate vasoconstriction. Diabetes insipidus. When ADH is not released, huge amounts of very dilute urine flush form the body day after day, can lead to severe dehydration and electrolyte imbalances. Electrolyte. Charged particles that conduct electrical current in an aqueous solution. Aldosterone. A second hormone that helps to regulate blood composition and blood volume by action on the kidney. Major regulator of sodium content. Water passively follows salt. Know that it'll be on the exam. Renin-angiotensin mechanism. Low blood pressure, kidneys release renin enzyme. Renin acts on angiotensin made in liver. Converts to angiotensin I. Angiotensin converting enzyme. Lungs converts angiotensin I to angiotensin II. Hormone angiotensin II binds to receptors on blood vessels, causing constriction. Angiotensin II then targets adrenal gland. Adrenal gland secretes aldosterone. Aldosterone targets kidneys. Kidneys reabsorb water and increase blood volume. BP. Addison's disease. Have polyuria, excrete large volumes of urine, and lose tremendous amounts of salt and water too. Urine, constantly facing dehydration, but can manage it with diet and drinking water. Alkalosis. Whenever pH of arterial blood rises above 7.45, a person is said to have this. Acidosis. Whenever pH of arterial blood drops below 7.35, a person is said to have this. Physiological acidosis. pH between 7.35 and 7.0. Acid-base balance. Equilibrium between acid and base concentrations in the body fluids. Bicarbonate buffer system. Most important buffer system that keeps blood pH from changing drastically. 3 major chemical buffer systems of the body. bicarbonate, phosphate and protein buffer systems. Adult polycystic kidney disease. A degenerative condition that appears to run in families, one or both kidneys enlarge, sometimes to the size of a football, and have many blister-like sacs, cysts, containing urine. These cysts interfere with renal function by obstruction, but initially not stopping urine drainage. Kidney transplants can improve the chances of survival. Hypospadias. Condition found in male babies only. It occurs when the urethral orifice is located on the ventral surface of the penis. Corrective surgery is generally done when the child is around 12 months old. Glomerulonephritis. The glomerular filters become clogged with antigen-antibody complexes resulting from childhood infections that may have caused damage to the kidneys and was not treated properly. Urgency. A feeling that it is necessary to void. Frequency. Frequent voiding of small amounts of urine. Nocturia. The need to get up during the night to urinate plagues almost 2/3 of this population.